before you got to Costa Rica, you were in college, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, it goes like this. I went to the University of Richmond in Virginia, where oddly enough, 9 of my classmates were from Panama. Just a total weird
No
thing.
shit, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are the
Panamanians.
odds of that, man?
Well, Panamanians really like to send their kids to Virginia schools, and that's a whole different podcast.
To Virginia
So,
schools.
yeah, because you got to cozy up to, the government because there's so much.
Politicians.
Well, there's so much U.S., Panama,
Yeah.
who gets the contract, et cetera.
Yeah, who
So
gets what, man?
Yeah, so it
crony
behooves
capitalism, man.
Yeah, and military industrial complex. So
Yep.
anyway, somehow Inception was planted in my head in university of like, hey, Panama is a cool place to be. I studied abroad in San Sebastian, Spain, in the Basque Country, because it was the only place where nobody else would go.
Mm-hmm.
And it was violent. It was crazy. It was ETA. And something about that just sort of jived with my Irish Catholic roots, because I had, family roots in Northern Ireland. And I really was just absolutely enamored with the idea of being abroad. And so when I came back to school for my senior year, I had it absolutely convinced in my head that I was going to start a business or move abroad. And those Panamanian students, many of whom are still my friends,
Really?
were like, Panama, 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 Panama. So I started to buy every book I could get on living, retiring overseas, all that sort of stuff. And it was just—
It's funny how you instantly jump to retiring, right?
Well, these were the books. There's
this idea, though, if you go overseas, you're somehow going to have like the good life or the easy life or something.
You just sit in a hammock, right? And buy
There
mangoes
is that kind
for
of
12 cents. So I consumed every single book I could get my hands on, but unfortunately, almost all the literature was about Costa Rica.
Interesting.
And yeah, this is 97, 98. My job prospects were nil. I was jack of all trades, master of none. I'm sure my CV looked like nobody else's. It was kooky.
Yep.
And I was working at an internship for a tiny software company that was doing web-based software when that was a very novel idea. It was like McAfee, Hotmail.
What year was this?
This is 97, 98.
Okay.
So there were a few, email-based programs on the internet. This is early days, right? I mean, most of us were still dialing up.
Yep.
And my boss at this tiny Virginia-based software company was like, "Do you think you could help promote our software on the interwebs?" I don't even interweb. But I knew a lot about it. I was always interested in technology from a very young age. At college, I was one of the early kids in the computer lab, messing around with Telnet and Gopher systems and all that goofy shit. And I just knew, even when I've been downloading a web page on Netscape painted for like 2 minutes, I just knew, you know what I mean? Like we all have those notions. You're like, this is the new radio or this is the whatever. So I was so excited to have an opportunity to teach myself something like that. So I was building his web page in Microsoft Front Page or some other garbage, writing all the content.
I used GeoCities, man. That was
right. I mean, learning 42 different search engines, Alta Vista, Hotbot, Lycos, Northern Lights, you name it. Yeah. And having a blast. And lo and behold, it kind of worked. We sold a lot. Unfortunately, his wife was dying of terrible health issues. But at 22 or 23 years old, it gave me an opportunity to learn a lot of different sides of a digital business. Then somehow, I convinced my retired parents with their 14-year-old surprise daughter who came way after the first 2 kids that we should all move to Costa Rica. And I'd done it. Yeah, I'd done it.
Tell me that conversation, man. I bet they've never even heard of Costa Rica before.
Not really. But my father had a hardware store that was my uncle's and my grandfather's. My mother had a clothing store. They were both teachers by trade. And they were just up for an adventure. They were both recently had sold their businesses and want to do something else. And I had gone away to boarding school my last 2 years of high school. So I really hadn't been around my parents since I was 15, 16.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it was kind of a fun Swiss Family Robinson year where we all moved to Guachipaline when that was a dirt road.
Right.
And a lot of horses. And And everything was hard, man. It was
Sure.
hard to get a phone. It was hard to get a phone line. It was hard to get a bank account.
Yep.
It was hard to get groceries. It was hard to use your credit card. It was hard to get a taxi. It was just hard then.
Everything. Yep. Absolutely.
And I decided to do what I know. So I just took the phone book and I turned it into an online phone book and just categorized all the businesses by industry that I thought were semi-interesting and built this little website called Costa Rica Pages and sold ads. And to this day, I still remember my first check, $249 from the Drake Bay Wilderness Resort, signed by Eric
Drake?
Todd. Yeah. And I ran downstairs and showed my dad that bad boy. I was like, watch this, point click, $250. So that grew nicely, and it was sort of my introduction to the ecosystem of expats and locals doing internet-ish business in Costa Rica. And that really primarily fell along a few lines.
Yep.
Travel tourism, real estate, and then all the other gray area businesses.
Sure. Yep.
And I dabbled a little bit with the gray guys, meaning sports books and whatnot. It just wasn't really for me.
Yep.
But I loved the hoteliers. There was something about these people that were pioneers, artists, pioneers, architects, just really the creative class of a lot of 60s and 70s era hippies.
Yep.
Also some really cool ticos. And I just really like these people. So around that time, my parents and my sister had done a year at Country Day School, made a ton of friends, but they just decided that, life in Guayaquil was a little bit too inconvenient.
Yep.
And they moved back to the States. I got a dumpy apartment in San Pedro and put an ad in the Tico Times for a roommate. And the guy that showed up ended up being my 20-year business partner.
That's crazy, right?
His mother worked in travel. And after maybe 6 months of he and I sort of working together, building a blog before there was a name for that.
Yep.
So we were writing articles about our travels, and it was pretty.
Still under the Costa Rica Pages.com banner or something?
Yeah, and we called it the Costa Rica Quarterly. And if you read this stuff, it's like a church. It's church bulletin bad. It's fraternity bulletin bad. But we knew it was bad, and we were having a fun time doing it. And our first, sort of our becoming moment was we had a CPL, which I don't even know what that means. Is that complimentary? We had a free trip to Punta Islita, and we were up in that. Yeah, we were up in that infinity pool drinking a cocktail, and we're like, let's just do this. You know what I mean?
We think we can trick hotel owners,
right?
Giving us free room and board.
Yeah, we're just gonna do this now. So I called his mom and asked a few questions about travel, and I was like, I think we can do this. And we built a little internet travel agency that, and this is still dial-up era. Leveraging a lot of the traffic that we had from Costa Rica Pages and the Quarterly. We had all these newsletter subscribers who were already kind of asking us to help them plan their trips. And that went from 2 employees to 5 to 10 to 20 to 50 pretty quick. And the key was we moved to Romoser because I got a hunch from somebody that was going to be the first area with cable internet, which was hardly a new thing in the States. But
I love it when you move based on the internet speed.
Yeah, man. But I mean, I think you can remember how bad it was to dial up.
Dude, it was terrible. It was super terrible. Like
18.8, 9600 if you were lucky.
I don't even know what I don't even know how to speed test back then. But back then,
so on published days, when we're trying to publish the website with front page or whatever, it was like a 45-minute affair. And if it got interrupted, your website was wrecked. Yep. Most of our days were spent standing in line at the bank, being at Banco Nacional, trying to make deposits into various hotels. It was an absolute shit show. But what was so great is the hotels that knew us, that would work with us, were primarily these 10, 12, 15 roomers where we knew the owners well. And it was just a fun collaborative thing. Yep. Like I'm sure you remember Sueño del Mar in Tamarindo, right?
Sure.
That was like the perfect sort of hotel partner for us. Boutique, unique, cool owners who are totally vested in guest experience, and just a collaborative effort. So we, kind of became like the sales and marketing arm for a lot of these properties. And even to this day, we do that for some of these properties where we'll actually do their direct sales and marketing for them.
Sure.
So it's been, it's been a great ride. 20 years went quick.
But now it's over, bro. So
Well, it might be. It might be. It might be.
It might be.
This could be. Well, look, and to be perfectly fair, I kind of think we lost the Pura Vida, dude. I really do. I think a lot of priorities have gotten out of whack. I think a lot of the amazing reasons that people got into this industry have been forgotten or polluted or corrupted. And as much as it stinks to see everybody suffering right now, including, employees that I've had to let go, and this term reset, I think, is real. And
I think you touched on something there, which is like, look, when you first started, and certainly when we first moved here to Costa Rica, it was more of an adventurous type of person who were opening businesses and starting stuff because it was so difficult, right? You couldn't just come down and have it easy, right? If you
it weeded out the weak ones quick, right?
It weeded you out, right? And so in reality, what you're saying is true, and it's going to happen again. It will weed out. This will weed out people, right? The people who aren't hardy enough to push through it are not going to get to the other side of this.
What year did you come down?
2000.
Yeah, I mean, so we're basically the same timeline.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you saw, like, the first huge thing we saw was September 11th, right? I mean, that was, oh man, we're all toast.
Right.
And then maybe that first, I guess, was it like 05-ish? No, I guess there was like a mini recession in maybe 04 or 03 or 04.
Sure,
then
it's
obviously
a different story, right? I mean, even 9/11, it was like, the planes were grounded for whatever, a week or something, right?
Yeah, it came back quick.
Quick.
Because everybody wanted it to, and Costa Rica's got such an amazing brand in terms of hope and healing and peace.
Yep.
Then obviously 08 was a rough maybe 6 months.
Yep.
2010 was sort of like the double dip recession. Then we had Zika, was a rough year. But I'm never saying like this.
This is it's a whole nother level, right?
It's full reverse.
Nobody really knows. Like, you turn something off, right? Like, I heard a guy say, it's like turning a motor. We've never turned this motor off before, right?
Yeah, that's the analogy we're using all the time. Will it reboot?
If you look at just Costa Rica, just tourism industry, it's never been stopped. I mean, it's been stopped for very, very brief times, right? And how's the motor going to start up again? Is it just going to turn on and poof, away we go? Or is it going to be like sputter, stall? We're not. There isn't clarity. I mean, we just have feelings, right? I feel it's going to jump right back, but I
think you're right, but I mean, again, I studied econ for 2 semesters, so I have no idea what I'm talking about. But
I was going to say,
it's one of those. Once you get through the 3rd book, you're like, oh, nobody knows anything.
Oh, right, exactly. Nobody knows. Everybody's guessing.
All right, but this does just feel like a classic crisis of confidence, where all of a sudden, when times are good, no one ever believes they're going to be bad. And when times are bad, no one can imagine it being good again. And I'm watching people that I've known for 2 decades lose their marbles. And I'm sure I had my moments. I just hope that we don't go so scorched earth here that there's not a healthy ecosystem to return to.
Right. Yep. I look at it kind of as a simple, like, spending money idea, which is like, you probably might have seen it. I had Noah Kagan on, right? And Noah, wealthy guy.
Shirtless, Noah.
Literally shirtless one. He's literally saying to me, he has millions and millions of dollars in the bank. Millions, right? He has his monthly spend. He's a super cheap guy. $3,000 is his monthly spend. Now, you and I know, are spending way more than $3,000, right? His monthly spends $3,000. He has millions of dollars sitting in the bank. And he's cutting back his expenses, worried about he's going to run out of money quickly. I'm like, okay, if this guy's worried, holy cow, right? We have to, but the mindset of, I'm going to save and I'm not going to spend anything, I'm going to be super tight, we'll never get it. If everybody adopts that mindset,
that's austerity. That's how you guarantee a depression.
That's right.
This is the challenge of austerity measures.
Right.
And I mean, if obviously the central government, I mean, that's way outside my realm too. But at least in Costa Rica, we're not hearing a lot about loan relief for hotels or tour operators who are going to need oodles and oodles of capital soon.
Yep.
I have not heard much about venture capital or private equity yet,
Right.
but man, if everybody decides to hole up, this is my concern.
Yeah.
It's going to be a nuclear wasteland.
That's right. Yep. So I'm trying to push the message of no. It's time to spend, man. Especially those of us who are fortunate to have a little bit of money in the bank. Yeah, you've got to protect your interests, right? You have to make sure your family's okay. But you look at it as the people who have a little bit can't just like, if they go into a hole, all the others, and I mean, 80% of the other people who are living paycheck to paycheck, it's a complete disaster for them already, right? It's important that, especially in the States, those are people who have enough money, get out there and start spending, right? I mean, this just has to happen.
Do you have any sort of guesstimate as to when the hardcore quarantine lockdown will end?
I gotta believe if we're not open, if Costa Rica isn't open for business, meaning there aren't flights coming in by June, I shake my head. I say, how on earth? If I look at me, right, and I think of myself at 20, because me at 20 with $300 in the bank, paycheck to paycheck living, right? I look at me at that age, and I think, how long could I have lasted if I didn't have a job, right? And the answer is like weeks, okay?
Well, obviously, that's for most people, yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. That's most people on this planet are that way, right? You can't go 3 months without working. It just doesn't even make sense, right?
Well,
And
particularly when these proposed paycheck protection solutions and whatnot on the U.S. side, they're going to be slow moving.
And I mean, you look at it down here in Costa Rica, what are they offering down here? A couple $100 maybe. I mean, that doesn't go far in Costa Rica. I don't care. I think they're offering, I don't know if you saw it the other day, they're offering, I don't know what it is, 100,000 colones each month for the next 3 months if you lost your job. Okay, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
But you can, if you have a family or you have what, you're done. That's nothing. You're done, right? And that is a very big concern for me for security, safety. Nobody wants riding on the streets, right? And
My top concern related to that, and one of our decision sets for finally pulling the trigger and letting a huge chunk of our staff go, which is torturous. But
yep.
I'm sure that one of the things that's amazing about living down here for so long, a lot of my political views have been softened. And one of those is my mind is blown that you can just shit can people in the States and give them nothing, in a lot of cases.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Obviously the flip side of that here is you're somewhat crippled by the fact that we have such massive obligations to somebody if you fire them, that a lot of times you keep people you wish you didn't.
Right.
Because it's kind of a weird Mexican standoff where you're hoping they quit and they're hoping you fire them. That said, I think it's pretty awesome that there is some sort of worker protection,
sure.
Beyond a pat on the back and here you go.
Right.
Our payout was massive, and a lot of our people were kind enough to let us structure those payments.
Yep.
So that's our end of it, right? So they're obviously the government and everybody else is counting on a lot of businesses to make good on that, as opposed to just folding in the middle of the night, which some did.
Well, I mean, but and you've seen it too, right? Because the government made that change where you could basically furlough or
right,
not fire, right?
That's
Those
not
people
right.
Then got no money, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's not right.
They gave you, just so anybody doesn't know who's listening right now, the government, in order to try and help businesses, it was done with the right heart, which is basically businesses are stopped, they're shuttered, and so you can basically pause your employees, pause paying them, they stay home, right? And which is fine for the employer, but for the employee, obviously you're at zero. And
but the piece you missed there is government still gets paid.
Yeah. Oh, right? You're so cynical, Ben.
Yeah.
No, they're talking about raising our taxes, Ben.
Right.
So if you're making any salary, well, I love how they use the word solidarity. It's a solidarity tax. Fuck you. It's you're stealing from me to pay to somebody else. And who are they going to pay first? They're going to pay the government employees first.
Of course. So my concern for our people was, if we wait too long, yep, when they then go to pick up their pension checks, which is the government piece of that might not be there. Yep. And I don't know how closely you've been watching local news, but already a couple of the public banks are slow paying people.
They're slow paying people.
Yeah, they're giving them the runaround. And so my concern on that front for everybody is if people who bought into this pretty awesome social safety net that we've had here for, 2, 3, 4 decades,
Right.
get down to the bank and find out maybe it's not there, then I could see
Then
things
people
getting really out of hand.
That's going to get ugly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the government has to, whatever they got to do, print more money. You got to pay people, right? That just doesn't even work.
Do you remember when Ecuador dollarized?
No, I have no idea what happened.
I was there that week, and I had never seen people getting fire hosed in front of a bank before, and that stuck with me. To
Tell
see
me
what
the story. I know a little bit about like Argentina, what happened there. Tell me.
Yeah, I'm not all that familiar with obviously Bolivia and Argentina. Some of those places seem to do this every 10 years, but I was in Ecuador for a good friend's wedding in like 2000, 99, 2000. And it just so happened to be that week they went from the sucre or whatever it was to the dollar, and people's life savings evaporated. It went from like, if you had 10 grand, now it's $10.
Right. Yeah.
And then there was
they gave you a crappy rate. They changed them all to dollars, and
overnight. There was a huge run on the banks. They had to have military in front of all the banks. They had the water cannons out, and I just had never seen anything like that. And you never think it could happen to you or wherever you're at.
No, I know it can happen.
Yeah, and so I have legit pit of stomach concerns sometimes here that if all of a sudden we're going to put 100,000 people out of work, this system's going to break.
Yeah.
And then we're back to loss of faith and loss of confidence. It's going to be hard to restore.
I mean, let's put it clearly. Money is all a confidence game. It's the moment the population feels like the money's worthless, it's worthless, right? And so, yeah, if you get to that point, it's ugly. And I've told people before, be careful about keeping large sums of money here in Costa Rica. Not to say Costa Rica is any more unstable than anywhere else in the world,
right?
But a lot of people have this false idea that, I'm keeping my money in a dollar account in Banco Nacional.
Right.
And I tell people that's fine. But the moment they make the decision, like if there was runaway inflation starting today and tomorrow they decide what they do is, they lock the banks up. You can't take any money out. And then they just convert all those dollars to colones at a crappy exchange rate. And your $20,000 in dollars is dust, and
right.
That's now worth $15. I
right.
mean, that happens, and we have enough history to know that happens, and the governments can do anything they want to when it comes.
We've had such a run, 35, 40 years of nothing bad happening in Costa Rica that people forget.
Yep.
You got to ask the real old timers who actually remember, the Central American Civil War period of how awful things can get.
Yep. I mean, I knew people who were here in the 80s when they had the first, the colone devaluation against the dollar, and brutalized. Imagine you gave a loan to somebody for your house in colones for, it was like 1-to-1, right? It was like one colone to $1, and somebody bought your house for $30,000, and you gave them the loan in colones, never thinking about what would happen, and then the colone went to 300 to the dollar, and your loan that was worth $30,000 is now worth $300, and you're totally ghosted, man. Like,
you guys, obviously, you're in and around the tourism industry with your other business. What are your friends in tourism saying?
I'm not dealing with them directly, right? Molly runs the business, does everything with the business, but she's told me, look, she's talked to hotel owners, and these aren't corporations, right? These are individuals who've owned these hotels.
Sure.
Like she got off one phone call. She looked like she was in, like, I was like,
shell shock.
And she was like, I just talked to a guy. He's like 65-year-old guy.
Right.
He's owned this hotel for 20 years.
Yeah.
He just let everybody go.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know if he's ever going to open again.
Right.
Like that's the kind of thing. I mean, you know the way it is. Small businesses, you own a 15-room hotel. Nobody's getting rich doing that. Almost nobody, right? You're surviving. And if you're not paycheck to paycheck, you might have 3 months worth of pay in your bank account if you're fortunate, right? And to let everybody go and to worry and be out of cash, I mean, it's freaking terrible.
It's the conversations that I've had with people. I mean, it sounds like people in the 7 stages of grief,
Mhm.
and that these hotels are living, breathing things, and they're watching them die. It's brutal.
Yep.
And so if you're a 65-year-old hotelier who built it from nothing, and you have genuine love for your staff, and you've watched them all grow and improve and build lives around that, um, it's also a loss of identity.
Yep.
And I've had those same conversations, and they're gut wrenching.
Yep. Yep. No, it's anytime you see this, it's almost like well, it's like a natural disaster or something where your home's been taken away and you don't have any
Right.
insurance, right?
Yeah.
Then there's no insurance, right?
Yeah.
There's no FEMA to come and pay you your money back, right?
Right.
And so, that's like the worst case scenario, right? Better case scenario, and I truly, my gut tells me, no, this is just like every other one I've been through in my life, and we've been like through 3 or 4 of these things in my life, right? Is that what we are now? We're in the overreaction stage.
I agree.
And no doubt, this is the worst thing in my lifetime to ever happen, right? Without question. So, but the question is, knowing that with the deep understanding that we're going to get out on the other side, right? What kind of steps are you taking for your particular business right now to actually look towards the other side and say, you know what, a lot of people are going to fall away. And I believe a lot of people are going to fall away. But from a business perspective, this is an opportunity where before I was 20% of the market, now I can be 40% of the market because the market's going to maybe smaller, but I can grab market share. So from a strictly business perspective, how are you approaching this?
So maybe week 1, we had every analyst, data person, consultant you could think of taking a look at the situation, because again, like it's such an absolute shitstorm that it's almost hard to even get your head around how bad it is. You know what I mean? It's like like 5 storms all converged at the same time.
Yeah.
So we got advice from, high level accounting people. We got advice from high level HR people, payroll tax, employee benefits stuff, you name it. Looked at it from every angle. And
just so people understand, how many people did you have pre this thing? How many?
Right around 100.
So you got 100 people. So it's a large business by
right around 100. Mm-hmm. And we've been running this thing for 20 years, and we've run it very fiscally conservatively. But like most businesses, most small, mid-sized businesses, we're looking at our income statement or our cash flow. Very rarely are we staring at our balance sheet. But all of a sudden, when there's no income, it feels like the entire industry effectively closed. Yep. And now we all go to our balance sheets. So we're staring at our balance sheet. And obviously right now, if you have to sell off all your assets at pennies on the dollar, we're all in the red.
Yeah.
So how do we all collectively survive if we're running on our balance sheets and our balance sheets are all upside down? So, it feels like a giant, massive margin call for our entire sector. I do think little by little, it's going to bleed into other sectors.
Right.
So as I'm staring,
little by little, man, I mean, it's
so as I'm staring at this problem with people who are way, way better at accounting than me, to me, the philosophical point that has been my guiding thing throughout this is the only thing left on our balance sheet that's worth anything is the goodwill. So that's the thing that I'm attempting to preserve in our business throughout this, is to not go scorched earth with my customers, to not go scorched earth with my employees, not go scorched earth with my collaborators in the hotel and tour business, so that assuming there is a comeback at some point, even if our cash is worthless, because we don't know if the cash is going to be worth tomorrow what we think it's worth today, and that's what everybody's hoarding.
Yep.
I don't want to say hoard, but I want to preserve the goodwill, because that's what we all ran on for 20 years. And that's the hoteliers that I love. That's the tour operators that I love, is we all have a general sense of shared values. Dare I say that was the Pura Vida thing that kind of greased the gears of this. So I haven't really thought at all about taking market share, et cetera. I just have thought about, if we're going to survive, it's going to be on goodwill, maybe even relying on the kindness of others, Tennessee Williams style. But if it all does go down in flames, and that's a possibility too, if I have to start over, I'd like to start over with my goodwill intact.
Yep.
So once I sort of, got through the ones and zeros, this is somewhat impossible. Even in accounting, there's this mysterious line item called goodwill. And I'm a little surprised at how many people have just completely forgotten about how important it is to maintain that. And if there's anything that Costa Rica has in spades, it's this amazing Pura Vida brand image. And I think that brand image, when converted to a line item in your balance sheet, that's goodwill.
Yep.
So that's my call to arms to the industry. Is I really am trying to get a handful of people to agree on some basic operating principles so that we don't go every man for himself and completely squander the goodwill in the hope of being the last man standing in a breath holding contest. Granted, I'm a young guy. This is all youngish. This is all I've ever done. Maybe my perspective is myopic, but geez, I don't know what other way to get through something like this.
Yep. So when you're talking about a set of standards, you're talking about, I think, because we've talked a little bit about this before, but you're talking about basically everybody stopped paying everybody in the last month or so.
Yeah, all the money stopped moving.
All the money stopped moving. And we experienced that in our business. People owe us money and you're not collecting right now. Everybody stops, right? So you're trying to get kind of the industry to agree upon kind of certain rules of the game.
Yeah, look,
we're going to act in an appropriate manner. And if everybody does the same, agrees on this kind of framework, we're all better off going forward because you can trust what we're doing, basically.
Clearly, Italy went, hey, Yankee, pound salt, right? Yeah. And maybe Italy can get away with that. I don't know.
Wait, no, tell me what you're talking about. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
The entire tourism industry of Italy basically said, you're not getting your money back.
Okay.
That was their solid.
I had a trip to book to Italy. Tough shit.
Book it again next year. Pay again next year. And I guess that's one angle. I guess what I'm saying is this: the industry kind of has had some unofficial operating practices when the machine was moving forward. We have never had any sort of understanding, because we've never had anything like this, of what to do when the whole machine's stuck in reverse. And again, I'm a left-handed nut job. My views are a little bit weird on this thing. I think that in order for the machine to reboot at all, any movement is better than no movement, even if it's slow reverse. I would rather we slowly go in reverse all the way back to the most important person, who's the customer, rather than just hunker down and hope that we can put the machine up on blocks and it's going to reboot later. I'd rather the machine keep moving in any direction, but I know that that's scary. And I also know that there's not enough money to go around right now, but I think we could make it happen in one way or another. We're luckier than some of the hotels in that as an agent, you can still sell. Mm-hmm. It's not like it used to be.
Yeah, you can be selling for Christmas time, right?
Yeah, sure. But for the hotels right now, they can't ever imagine life again. They don't know when an arrival is ever going to come.
Yep.
I'm concerned that if we go total loss of faith, we're going to go back to 20 years ago when everything was pay last minute. Everything was, you need cash on your person. You're going to need gigantic rolling reserves with your credit card processor. You're going to need reinsurance. You're going to need to post a bond.
Yeah.
It may go that way, but how do you do that if you don't have any money? Yeah. Right? And I'm still even trying to get my head around it. I've only had one conversation with a friend who's fairly high level in banking of just how levered up is everybody?
Yeah.
How much bigger is credit than cash? Is it 5X? Is it 8X? Is it 10X? Because if it's 10X and we're all trying to collect on that 10 when now we're back to cash and there's only 9 people are going to get screwed.
Yeah.
So, I think we're going to need a team of really, really smart people in probably insurance and banking and venture cap. Maybe there's a government guy at the table who can pledge, $100 million in worker protections. But I think this problem is so big that the idea that we're all going to scatter like ants right now and protect our own little tiny anthill, I don't see it working.
Yeah.
But that's just my belief. And you know me, I'm hardly a socialist, but I think in this moment we got to do something extreme.
Well, it's going to be, I don't know. I do feel like the U.S. has to lead the charge, and I think the $2 trillion of ridiculous money that it's going to be spent and given out over the next month or 2 months will go a long way. Like if the United States of America if Americans feel like they can spend and travel and do stuff, it kind of jumpstarts our economy here in Costa Rica. That's my hope. My hope is that the U.S. opens up and your average American feels like, let's go. Where are we going this summer? Like, that's my hope.
So if you're making a bold prediction, you're saying there's travelers coming down here in July?
Absolutely. Yeah. If I'm making a prediction, I got to feel like that's happening. If I tell you this, man, if this, because I've heard, I hear the different sides of the stories. Other people are like, oh no, it's not happening until January. If Costa Rica doesn't have tourists until January, first of all, I don't know, 6 out of 10 hotels aren't coming back. All those people, what are those people? I mean, all those workers, hotels, restaurants, tour companies, you're going to tell me people cannot work for 8-9 months?
No.
How on earth does that work? It doesn't work. Like, there's not enough money on the planet to pay for people to sit at home for 9 months.
No, and I think that at that point, the amount of stress-related illness and death is going to dwarf anything virus-related.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm ready to kill my wife right now.
I know. I've got the door boarded up. So we're,
you know what I'm saying? Like, this is not
working
the
on
way
Easter.
we're meant to live, brother. This is not the way we're meant to live.
I mean,
it is not the way we're meant to live.
The high hilarity of this is all of this is compounded with the quarantine. The quarantine's making it so much harder. So you can only imagine how hard it is to communicate with stressed out employees who aren't sure about their jobs.
Yep.
We're all spooling up work from home offices simultaneously. It's the hardest working environment possible. Absolutely. I think we're getting through that little by little, but I'm still sneaking into the office. I can't
stay here.
I can't effectively work from home.
My wife's like, I'm going to Raw today, man. I'm out. She's like, I got to get out of here. I just got to get out of here. Right. And we're lucky, right? I have a 4-bedroom house, 5-bedroom house. I got office space. I'm a lucky one, right?
Right.
I think about my 20-year-old self, 6 guys in a 2-bedroom apartment. I've been killing people.
Right.
Like, there's no way.
Right.
So I always look at, like, yes, I'm fortunate right now to be able to, and I'm still not doing great with it, but I'm pretty fortunate. If I was at my 20-year-old self, I'd be going absolutely bonkers right now.
Am I allowed to ask you this? And feel free to duck this one. What are your embassy buddies saying?
It's not. I think they're saying the same. Nobody knows. This is the thing, man. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And I do believe the U.S. is going to lead the movement either into holding up longer or opening this thing up. Recognizing, like you and I think are on the same page, recognizing that the quarantine at some point is far, far more damaging than the actual virus, right? Because, I mean, everybody seems to say in a year, 6 months, 8 months, we're all going to have this thing anyway. Everybody's got it. It's like, it's the most, half the people don't even get sick when they have it. It's going to be everywhere.
If we're so concerned about immune systems right now, one surefire way to wreck immune systems is stress. Yeah. And obviously financial stress is top of everybody's mind.
Yep. Oh man. It's number one. I mean, they say it's like the number one reason people break up is finances. I mean, this is the worst. And to tell people that your lifestyle's gone, your job's gone, whatever. I mean, our business, like your business, our business went from this is the best year ever, literally to zero. Literally. Every hotel we work with is closed. I think Molly did a good job getting on top of it, basically immediately saying to these hotels, look, there are no charges. If you need soap, we're sending it to you. Don't worry. Right. But other than that, so, we're trying to keep, like, I'm on the same page as you. You got to keep the goodwill. You got to try to help people, because if we do ever come out on the other side, you want to be on the, the right side of history, right? You don't want to be the guy who screwed people, right?
So I think I told you this. I mean, I've had some pretty kooky moments. It happens to you when you're working, 8 to 10 every day trying to save 100 jobs. All I could think of was fraternity initiation and Catholic Knights of Columbus initiation.
Right.
And a lot of these have sort of a similar character arc, or whatever you want to call it. And one of those is, they put you through hell to see who's going to act like a jerk.
Right.
And the minute they flip the lights on and tell you it was all a test, you feel like a real fool if you were one of the people who was stepping on the other guy's throat to try to, get the last dollar.
Yep. It's true. And for those of you who don't know about these things, basically mine in my fraternity, what it was, was basically get you to rat out one of your buddies, right?
There you go.
Who was it? Who cheated? And of course, everybody cheated, right? Right. So who are you going to get? We'll let you through if you tell us who did it, right? So who's going to be the one?
Right. Who thinks about themselves first?
Right. Exactly.
And again, I am no communist, but when it comes to an entire industry's ecosystem is at risk.
Mm-hmm.
What made Costa Rica so great is now where we're all struggling. What made it great was that we didn't have a lot of huge branded properties. We didn't have a lot of access to capital. So everybody bootstrapped. Everybody ran it, like a Chinese laundry and I mean that in the nicest possible way, where it was dollar in, dollar out. But now who stands to gain the most, unfortunately, I believe, are the giant branded properties who have access to capital markets. They are the first ones that refunded the money to the customers. It's the Airbnbs. It's the Expedias. Mm-hmm. That's the ecosystem that's the part of the ecosystem we all sort of tolerate, because what are you going to do? You can't beat them, join them. But if at the end of this, that's all that's left, then Costa Rica is just another Cancun. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really, really hope doesn't happen here. Because the truth of the matter, if you go to any of these boutique hotels, is they take amazing care of their people. These people, I know that you know this, I'm sure from your time in Capos, people who started out in the front desk or started out carrying luggage, who now own their own tour operator or own 10 vans or own restaurants.
Yep.
Tourism is an incredible economic accelerator. And it allows people in remote parts of the world to not have to move to cities and put on ties and work for insurance companies. And I think there is part of the financial elite that runs some parts of Latin America that really do not like that. I felt that in particular in Panama. Mm-hmm. I think Costa Rica has been much kinder about that because most Ticos love the countryside. They have connection to the countryside. But I have watched, parts of the Osa Peninsula, certainly parts of Capos, parts of Guanacaste, obviously everything around Arenal, even over Tortuguero in the Caribbean, places that were destitute.
Sure.
Where if you now are a nature guide, a naturalist, a birding guide, a really good hotel manager, you can have a great living and not have to leave your hometown. Yeah. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. It is. It's one of the nice things, like you said, about tourism, about what it can do when you have foreign dollars come in, where somebody can make a living and a nice living with a little bit of hustle and effort, and it works. Tourism does work that way.
And it's such a great sharing thing where, the busy New Yorker is as touched by seeing a different way to live and tapping into that for a brief period of time as the local is to accept, his hedge fund dollars. Yeah. And I think sometimes people don't quite understand what an honest and fair trade that is.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I never give much play when people, the tourists are ruining this town. Yeah, I don't, it doesn't work that way. Right.
And on the flip, I think Costa Rica is rare. I've certainly seen it in other parts of Latin America where the Ticos aren't faking it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe there's some of it, but there's an authentic interaction and exchange there that I think is about as honest and fair of a trade as you can ask for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my overarching concern of what might get lost here. If we all end up working for big box hoteliers, if we all end up working for Expedia or Google Hotels, when organizations get that big, they just can't afford to care as much about that one particular maid's situation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
hate to use the maid analogy because I feel like everybody kind of hides behind that. But legit, I have a small hotel too. My company does. It's all the team.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the bricks and mortar. It's not the view. It's not how many gallons the pool is. It's the team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people want. And somewhere in all, because in the end, this is still a capital issue and a labor issue and a what are these people going to do issue. I just don't, again, the problem is so big. I don't know that anybody has sat down and tried to get their head around how big the problem is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if
Oh,
anybody can, and I don't know if anybody, there is no, for me, there's no, big brother can't come in and make a solution, right? The solution is just people traveling, people working, free market capitalism happening, right? And the only way that can happen is if people feel confident. Like nobody's going to spend their dollar if they think they can't earn another dollar down the road,
right,
right?
right.
And so it's literally it's a con game, but we all have to have confidence in it. And for me, that's really the only way forward. And how are we going to get back to that? The only way to get back to that is to get back to it. I don't know. Everybody has to have their jobs, but there's no way to do that other than just to do it. I don't.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I guess the old I don't know if it's Milton Friedman or whoever tries to dumb these things down for us, but you talk your way into a recession and you got to talk your way out.
that's right. That's exactly right. Yep.
So my team's trying to do our part. I mean, part of why I'm talking to you today, is trying to do our part to say all hope is not lost,
All
people. I
hope
mean,
is not lost.
I feel like Kevin Bacon in Animal House, right? All is
All
well.
is well.
You know,
But the
uh,
reality is that it is all well. I mean, at
yeah,
the core, it is.
yeah.
Nothing's been destroyed. Nothing's been damaged. No bombs gone off, right? Literally everybody, other than dealing with a virus, we're all good. We can
And
that's the reality,
and
right?
I'm
Actually,
sure you've noticed because you don't live too far away from me. It's never been more beautiful outside.
I don't know if you've seen online, dude. People are like in I don't even know where it was, Caples or whatever. They're like, the nature's back, and there's like freaking leopards on the beach,
Didn't take long, did it?
Did you see that? Did you
Yeah,
see that?
it didn't take long.
It didn't take long.
Yeah,
It took 2 weeks to
yeah,
have the jaguars back on the beach in
yeah.
like the Osa
So
Peninsula and stuff.
if this is all some forced meditation that we're all being, tricked into, I'm all for it.
It's
You
all
know,
for it. I gotta believe we're gonna come out of it on the other side. And but it is interesting to look how historically people are gonna view this in even 5 years out. Like, wow, y'all lost your minds for like 3 whole months there.
yeah, yeah.
you know?
It's
And
going to be
it's
fascinating to see what the wackiest things that some people do are.
yeah.
I could never quite understand the whole notion of how people lost gigantic fortunes in 29.
Yep.
Now I do,
Oh
because
yeah,
there's such a
absolutely.
weird impulse to sell the bottom.
Yeah, to get out, run.
Just run.
Absolutely.
And I get
Absolutely.
it. I'm sure you've had moments. I had moments where I'm sitting there with my finger of like, should I just liquidate everything? Um, but ultimately, it's kind of like, I guess, the Pascal's argument of should you believe in God or not? Well, whatever your religious views are, it's like, should you believe things are going to get better or not? It's just,
Yep.
it's a better outcome to bet
100%.
that things are going to get better. It's
100%.
just a better bet.
100%. And it's hard. It's interesting the way that's hard to do because we are basically, monkeys, and we're not that far removed from being just like pure animals, right? And so with like I've talked to people and they made a good point, I think, which is this could have never happened in 1995. the way we've reacted to this has actually been driven by me, you, and everybody else out there on our phones and social media, recognizing what happened, and then our government's actually reacting to what's happened, right? Or to the way we're reacting. And the way you saw how the countries in Central America, South America just closed their borders, boom, 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 boom. It's like one after the other. Within 3 days, everybody's closed. That could have never happened. It didn't happen. Like there was SARS in whatever, 1998.
Right. Yep.
It occurred. It was basically similar to this. What happened? Nothing happened. I mean, a lot of people died, like 500,000 people died or whatever it was. But the reaction was actually driven by us, the individual people, getting on there and basically forcing our governments, where our governments were like, you know, if we don't shut the border, like let's just take Costa Rica. If the president of Costa Rica hadn't shut the borders down and 1,000 people had died in Costa Rica, they'd have hung him, you know, from the top of Chirpu, and he would have not only never been reelected again, he would be forever seen as like a terrible person, right?
Right.
And so our leaders, you know, government leaders almost had to react, had to do that for just self-interest, right? To not be seen as like just a terrible, terrible person. And so it's so interesting. Like people say, you know, we are living in interesting times. It's true. And, you know, I don't believe it's conspiracy. I believe we as people drove this whole thing. And I look back how we're going to look at this in 5, 10, 50 years and just be like, wow, you didn't know how to deal with social media. You didn't know how to deal with this because we were so new to it. And you all literally lost your shit.
Yeah.
For 3 months, you lost your shit and almost brought the world to its knees because you lost your fucking minds.
Yeah.
And locked yourselves in homes.
Well, and back to your fraternity analogy, it cracks me up how now it's a new thing to rat on your neighbors.
Well, that's only recently. I just can't even go there. How fucking crazy that shit is.
Yeah, but it reminds you, you know, people who have never been to Cuba or who have never been to Venezuela, it's hard to imagine how you could bring an entire country to their knees, but it's done through the toadies who are the neighbors.
One person at a time.
Oh,
telling on another person.
That's
literally it. It's literally it.
So it just makes you see how easy it is to get that kind of stuff done, regardless. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't rat on your neighbor who's breaking quarantine, but if it's not that, it's something else, or it's something else.
Right.
It's amazing how people become sort of vassals of the state. But this is just a fascinating emotional, economic, psychological exercise. And the first week or two for me were like an MBA in high level accounting and whatnot. And this kind of stuff's not really in textbooks. You know, like how do you deal with depression economy? How do you operate a business in a depression economy? Miniature, temporary, whatever. And the other one is, this is an absolute triple PhD in human psychology of watching what people are going through. And for a lot of people, it's grief. They're going through grief, man. The old life is over. You want to replay every mistake you've ever made. How did I get here? And then for a lot of people who get through the other side.
And it's not your fault either, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you had a business and you screwed it up. You know, this is something completely out of your control.
But everybody wants to find blame. I mean, that's assigning blame is what we're good at. But then for the people who get through that, it's, oh man, maybe there could be something way better than this.
Yep.
And I'm holding on to that one.
Yeah.
And I know you as an entrepreneur, you're like, oh, cool. Maybe I got to do something different now.
Yeah. I mean, I actually like if people don't know, you really got together with that Don't Cancel, Promote. You were the one who created that video, and it was fantastic. And I just like the idea that, okay, a lot of craziness is going on, but that doesn't mean I can't say that we're going to get through this. And I think it's going to be awesome afterwards. And let's look at it in a positive light. And it's really
long view
hard to do.
The
it's
long
really
view.
Hard to do. But what's like you said, believing in God or whatever, what's the alternative, right?
You believe it's going to suck and you go into your bunker.
It's going to suck. We're going to be zombie apocalypse. I mean, I understand.
You hoard ammo.
The charm of that. And, oh, look, it's going to be awful. This is terrible. But it doesn't help anything, right? Like to look at it in a positive way is just, it's the best way forward, right? In my view. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, man.
No, I mean, it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating. I'm just holding out hope. What else you got?
Yeah.
You know, what else you got? I think there's blind, stupid optimism, and then there's 50 years of momentum of this being one of the best places on earth to actually exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to evaporate overnight unless we all lose complete faith and we create the hellhole.
Yeah. Honestly,
you know
my entrepreneur brain goes to, oh my God, this is an amazing opportunity.
It's called a
so
reset.
My brain goes to.
You don't want
to take, like, look, nobody likes to see other people suffer. Nobody wants other people to suffer. But if, every hotel in Costa Rica is closed right now, right? A lot of people aren't going to be able to restart their hotels, right? There are going to be opportunities to come out of this on the other side. And I'd rather be of a mindset of, and rather have everybody of the mindset of, well, how can we come back? What can we do first? We should open up first. We should get on, we should be promoting our brand right now. We should be out there right now, because I feel like that gets everybody moving forward. And me opening the doors quicker than everybody else maybe gives me a little advantage, but guess what? It gets my people back to work. It gets them spending money too. Me marketing and being out there and everything moves the money, right? Gets it going, right? And I think it's important that we do that. If you're in
if for no other reason, confidence.
That's right.
And just like you mentioned with somebody as seemingly successful as a Noah, and there are some of these hoteliers down here who are independently wealthy humans.
Sure. Yeah.
A lot of them are losing their minds too, man. So I just think I think courage is contagious.
Yep.
I think hope is contagious. And I think it's incumbent on a lot of us to start spreading that instead of gloom and doom. And I don't think that necessarily means you're a virus denier or a dummy.
That's right.
I just think that, it's hard to be first. No one wants to stick their head out and get it blown off, but somebody's got to do it.
Yep.
And there's a small group of people that are working together. We're trying to do something. It's just, this problem is, I think, so big that no one has stopped to try to ponder, well, what would it take?
Yep.
If it's that big.
Well, I think with that size, like everybody knows, it's beyond the individual to do anything to the global, but you can make the impact for your little ecosystem, right? And my little ecosystem, my little business, your business, you can make that impact by saying, no, we're actually going forward. We're preparing for when this opens back up. We're still out there marketing for when it opens back up. Right?
I think that's what would be amazing. I mean, talking about social media, et cetera, whether obviously it's been part of the problem, potentially part of the solution here. It's absolutely amazing. So you mentioned that video that a couple people on my team worked on. That got to the president in 2 days. Mm-hmm. 2 days. President of Costa Rica.
I got to feel it was my tweet that moved them.
It might have been, dude. But that's the beautiful part. Beautiful part is
that's right.
Everybody can help now.
Yep.
To the point where that was a couple guys on our team who did that in a weekend. Mm-hmm. By Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm at that person's apartment. This is Adam Baker, who is our media guy, who's wonderful. I'm at his apartment, and he's on all 3 channels. His video is being played on all 3 channels. That happens when in the history of humanity could that have ever occurred?
It would
before?
never happen. It would never happen.
And this is one guy with a laptop and a camera who mashes that together. It's a couple of us working on the concept over the weekend on WhatsApp, and that's being tweeted by the president and on all 3 channels in a weekend.
Yeah.
That's the awesome power that I don't think most people realize that they do have to create impact and change.
That's right. Man.
Well, should we leave it on that?
I think we leave it on that, brother. That's tight, man. That's
just
tight.
2 bald Irish guys putting sunscreen on their head in Central America.
Man, I can't wait to get it. We'll have to do another one in January when we're past this mess, and man.
Well, I mean, it does feel like we're in a war, and it's going to be amazing to see who the war veterans are on the other side. Yep. And pin some medals on each other for having done something good.
All right, brother. Have a great Sunday, man.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for working on a Easter Sunday with me.
Pura vida, man. Take care.
Pura vida. Ciao.